Today we'll find out what these blocks, these pipes, and this man can tell us about preventing this.
Can we get out of here now?
And we'll watch David get wet. Stay tuned.
Japan. Landslide.
Japan is in Asia. Japan is a country made up of many islands and a land of many contrasts. To us in Japan, Mount Fuji is a national symbol, much like the Grand Canyon or the Statue of Liberty is a symbol to Americans. Every Japanese tries to make a trip to the mountain at least once in their lives. We are usually happy just looking at it. But David wanted to get a closer look.
I had heard Mount Fuji was eroding, being slowly washed away, and that nothing could be done to stop it. But as we got closer, we began to see some pretty odd things we didn't expect.
31? That's weird.
Like huge boulders with numbers on them.
It looks like this is a riverbed, and these probably came from landslides, but why are they numbered?
And concrete blocks buried in the ground.
What are these things?
I don't know.
And then there were these oddly shaped blocks piled on top of each other. What was all this about?
What is this?
わかんないわ。
It all seemed to be part of a plan. But what?
This is mighty weird.
It is
What do you think it is?
modern sculpture.
Yeah, but what does it mean?
Who knows?
Nothing up here. And there's nothing up here either.
David, we have to get the helmet for heads. Helmet.
Hard hat.
Hard head.
It's called a hard hat.
I
Not
thought-
a, what did you say? Hard head.
I thought it was hard head. はい。
ここはですね、
はい。
工事現場ですから、
ええ
このヘルメットなく被らなくてですね、
ええ
入ってもらっちゃうと困るんですけどもね。
すいませんでした。
え
So he was telling us that we're not allowed to be in here without helmet.
Oh.
This area. I'm sorry. ごめんなさい。But we were so interested in what they are, so I'm sorry, really.
こんにちは、はじめまして
こんにちは。
僕はデビッド・クイーンです。
私ここの工事現場の責任者の水野と言います。
He's Mr. Mizuno, who is in charge of this project. My name is Kaori. 富田香織です。
Ask him what's going on here.
何してるんですかここで。
これはですね、
え
あそこの富士山の崩壊からですね、
See, can you see the Mount Fuji over there? And can you see the erosion? And the muds or water comes from the erosion. And this area is to control that muds or water.
What are these big things?
この大きいのは何ですか？
これはですね、まあちょっとここではちょっと分かりにくいんですけども、実際に据え付けるところございますんで、そこへ行ってみましょうか。
He said, well, it's a sort of, concrete block, but it's quite hard to explain. So he's going to show us how it is, how they use it.
Mr. Mizuno took us away from the hard hat area to revisit the odd sights we had seen
これ
before.
がですね、先ほどあちらで見ましたね、コンクリートブロックなんです。
See, these are the concrete blocks which we saw before. And あれも同じですね。
あれも同じものですね。
And these are the same as them.
Well, why are these buried?
もともとあれのですね、これ
These blocks over there is a sort of wall to prevent mud going through.
それで
And these blocks which are buried here is to sort of reinforce the wall because sometimes water digs the ground around here. So they are buried to prevent the ground being digged because when it is digged, the blocks over there will fall down.
Could we go up there?
向こうに行ってみていいですか？
どうぞ。
Domo arigato.
どうもありがとうございます。
Why are the blocks shaped like this?
なんでねこんな形をしてるんですか？
これはね、この突起が出てますね。でこれが地面にね、ぐっとこうと言ってみましょうかね、潜り込んで、これ自体が安定するような形になってますね。
Can you see these sort of spike in order to stay stable?
Oh, so it's for stability. They shape them that weird way so they'll stay put. But how did you know to do this? Why didn't you just put up a wall to begin with?
だから地盤の変動に応じられるような自由なフレキシブルな、構造を考えてこういうブロックの塔型にしてるわけです。
See, these blocks are more flexible than the wall.
So if anything happened, they'd shift more and the wall would just tumble down.
That's true. Yeah, that's right.
That's a great system. This place is huge. There's blocks everywhere.
すごい広いとこですね。
The puzzle was beginning to come together. But what about those numbered rocks?
あそこに崩壊見えますね。
So you can see them crumbling over there.
この石はね、あそこの崩壊から流れてきたんですよ。
So these rocks are from that crumbling in the
From the mountain. Oh, so these rocks tumble all the way down the mountain?
When it rains very heavily or when snow melts and there's a lot of water and they wash down the rocks or they push the rocks down.
Why does he number them?
They numbered on the rocks in order to calculate the strength of the water. And how do you calculate?
この石がですね、例え
They
ば
calculate the weight of the rocks. And then they know the distance before and after the rain, how much they are pushed. So that by knowing the weight and by knowing the distance, so they can calculate
The force of the water. But I still don't understand. Why don't they just let the erosion continue? Why do they take the time to build these channels to conduct, which way the erosion and the rocks will go? A landslide can be very destructive. Melting snow and heavy rainfall washing loose soil and rocks down a mountainside cause powerful slides. The weight of the water and the mud causes bridges, roads, and houses to collapse. People are left homeless and must be moved to safer ground. Landslides are natural disasters. How long has this been going on? How long has the mountain been eroding for?
まあ約1000年前からこういう侵食が始まっていると、そういうふうに言われてますね。
About 1,000 years.
That's a relatively short amount of time when you're talking about geology, though, isn't it?
もう本当にまあ昨日って言って本当に短い時間なんですね。
Yes, you're right. From the geological point of view, 1,000 years is a very short time, like yesterday.
Mr. Mizuno took us further up the mountain to show us where the huge rocks came from.
木のところですね、いっぱいにね、こう流れていくわけなんです。すべてここを通って下流へ行くわけです。
See, in spring, when snow melts and if the rain falls very heavily, when snow melts, so maybe in April or May, all the stuff from the erosion, like mud, soil, rocks, and stones, all go straight through this narrow place. And sometimes, because it's too much, so sometimes the floods go over the trees, like over there.
Way up there?
Way up there.
This whole place fills up with water and mud and rocks?
これだけのね高さがございますけども、これで一つの一枚の溶岩になってるわけですね。
これだけですか？
これで一枚の溶岩ですね。
Mount Fuji is a volcano, and this layer of rocks, this layer of rock, from there to here, is one layer of the lava.
This huge chunk here is one layer of lava?
Yes, and underneath this lava, underneath this layer, there's a softer, looser layer. It's a layer of the volcano ash. And underneath the volcano ash, there is another layer of the lava like this.
Oh, so Mount Fuji's like a lava sandwich. It's got a big, chunk of lava here, and then underneath it, there's this soft ash and rocks, and underneath that is another layer of lava.
ここのルーズな火山灰とかね、火山歴がね、こうスコアされるわけですね。そうするとこの溶岩自体がね、持ちきれなくなって、で落ちてですね、下流へドーンと流れる。
When it rains very heavily, or when there is a lot of water, the water washes down the layer, the softer layer of the ashes. And then when there is no ashes, then the rock can, the layer of the lava cannot stand still, and they will be rushed down.
You mean this whole huge chunk of lava could just break right off and tumble down the mountain?
Yes, right, and go below.
Mount Fuji is built like a sandwich. Layers of hard lava on top of layers of soft ash. When the soft layers are exposed, they slowly slide away, leaving the hard top layer with no support and ready to crumble. When it rains, this process is speeded up. The water washes away the soft layers, the hard layers crumble and fall down the mountain. The washing away of Mount Fuji is a natural process. The purpose of the project Mr. Mizuno works on is not to stop the erosion, but to control the annual flow of mud and rocks. Channel it away from the towns below the volcano. By building barriers and channels, the destructive mudslides can be slowed down and routed around populated areas and into the sea. Oh yes, Mr. Mizuno had showed us all the pieces of the puzzle except one. Those odd pipes. Okay, what is this place? What are these things?
Mizuno-san,
これ何だと思う？
what do you think it is?
Oh, I haven't the faintest idea what these blocks are. But those look like water pipes, right?
No. これはね、この地盤が水の力でこの掘られると。それを防ぐために置いてあるんです。
See, these blocks are to prevent the ground or mud around here being eroded.
Oh, Why does that make a difference?
Because when the ground is eroded, then the walls over there will be fall down.
Oh, so these blocks here protect that wall from falling down.
そうですそうです。
If you're right.
Okay, but what's the wall for?
じゃあその壁は何ですか？
じゃあちょっとこちらへ。これがね、このパイプの、基礎になるわけなんです。
This concrete thing is the foundation of these pipes.
Oh, so these hold the pipes up. Then what are the pipes for?
じゃあこのパイプは何のためにあるんですか？
これはですね、この上流からね、その大きな石とか、から砂、から水一緒になってこう流れてくるわけですね。でここではですね、この大きな石をね、これこうグッとこう止めると。
Well, first, these pipes are filled with concrete, and when soil or mud or rocks coming through, when they go down, when they come down. They come down. Thank you. They trying to prevent them going through, and like big rock could be like he did before. The big rock could be blocked here by these pipes.
So the mud and the rain and the water wash through and are stopped down there, and the big rocks are stopped by these concrete pipes.
Yes, that's right.
It's a pretty big system.
The Mount Fuji project is one of the largest civil engineering projects in the world. It's not finished yet, but it has already saved many lives by controlling the destructive force of the annual landslides. In this building, Japanese scientists and engineers experiment with landslides. Hiromu Moriwaki is one of the researchers who studies ways of predicting where and when such natural disasters will happen.
What causes a landslide?
それにはいろいろ理由がありますけれども、
There are a lot of reasons.
一番は土の種類ですね。
The first is the difference between the soils.
Are there many different kinds of soil?
日本ではたくさんありますけども、この2つが代表的な2つです。
There are many soils in Japan, but this is the two main, kinds. One is sand. これですね。
もう一つはこれは粘土ですね。
Another one is sort of clay.
This one feels a lot stickier.
It's very sticky.
Is that important?
これはなんか重要
その
なんですか？
粘土っぽいやつが結合力を高めているわけですね、土の。
Because it's sticky, so it holds the shape stronger. And sandy soil tends to crumble when they hold the water.
So the clay is much stronger than the sand.
ということはこっちの方がこの砂よりも強いということになりますね。
Is that important in studying landslides?
その土の違いをね調べるということは地滑りの研究でやっぱり大切なことですか？
はい、一番重要なことですね。
Yes, this is the most important point.
You said that there are many different things that might cause a landslide, only one of which is the importance of the kinds of soil. What are some of the other kinds?
雨の量ですね。
The second is the amount of the rain.
Rain?
Yes, the rain.
This is the largest rainfall simulator in the world. The rain is controlled by computers that can simulate real rainfall patterns.
We're going to experiment so we'll know what sort of rain will cause the crumbling.
It's obvious. I mean, this thing's already mud. And this one is still standing.
This is stronger.
Oh, there it goes again.
In the end, both will crumble, but the sand one is tend to be crumble easier. See?
Yeah. Whoa. So eventually this one's going to crumble too. It's just that this one crumbles a lot faster. Why would someone want to build on soil like this if they knew that it was just going to crumble?
なんでこんな風にすぐ崩れやすいってことが砂は崩れるのが早いっていうのが分かってるのにどうしてこういうところに家を建てるんですか？
日本はねやはり土地が狭いからですね。
Because Japan is so small, there is no other land to stand and to build the house. 1/3 of the mountains in Japan are covered with the sandy soil.
So you don't have a choice. You have to build on the soil, but at least it's better to know. That's why they study it, so they know when it's going to crumble. Can we get out of here now? Can we go look at that other experiment you have? I'm soaked.
From this experiment, we have learned that these two soils behave differently when they get wet. Sand is more predictable and crumbles sooner than clay. But when the clay holds water, it becomes mud, moving mud, and much more dangerous than sand. We studied about the soil, and we studied about the amount of the rain. And this experiment is to do with the steepness of the land. This experiment is to test how much water the soil will hold at a particular angle before it begins to slide.
What are those things up there that look like tin cans on a string?
白いね、缶みたいのは何ですか？
あれは地面の移動量を測る機械です。動きを。
That is the sort of equipment to measure the movement of the soil.
So, you know where the landslide started from?
じゃあ、どこからね、地滑りが起こったかっていうのがわかるわけですね。Yes, exactly. And then, can I ask, what is the black and sort of black board with a white dot in the middle?
あれはですね、あそこのカメラ、TV カメラを撮りましてですね、後でどういう速度で落ちていったかを測る機械なんです。指標です。
Can you see that?
Yeah, the TV camera.
Yeah, TV camera. See, they film the movement of the soil. They use that board as an indicator, so that they can
so they can look back later and see where the slide started from and where it went.
And they can calculate the speed.
Oh, is
the
speed important? Is it important to know how fast it went?
スピードのどのぐらいの速さかっていうのを知るのはね、重要なことなんですか？
速いスピードであれば遠くまで流れていくと危険だということですね。
The faster the speed is, the longer soil goes.
Oh.
That means more dangerous.
What's that thing up there? It looks like a radio antenna. The white pole. Is it an antenna?
あそこに種類がありますね。あれアンテナなんですか？
はい、あれはね、加速度計です。
That is acceleration gauge. なんてlet me.
What does it do?
何するんですか？
やはり高解土砂の速度を測る機械なんです。
It also calculates speed.
Oh,
to see the speed.
That also works to figure out how fast it goes.
Yes, as I told you before, there are lots of factors which cause the landsliding. For example, the kind of soil, the amount of the rainfall, and the angle. Every year they change the conditions so that they know which point matters most to the landslide.
Each year they change one thing so they can narrow it down into the most important factors.
Yes, exactly.
申し訳ないですけど、ちょっと行かなきゃならないので、それでお別れします。
どうもありがとうございます。He has to go. So thank you very much.
He's got an experiment to conduct.
The amount of rain that will fall during the 2 hours of this experiment is equal to what might fall on a real hillside during the entire rainy season. The scientists collect information on how much water the soil can hold before it begins to slide. They hope to find ways of predicting where future landslides will happen before they cause any harm. Shizuru is in the 6th grade. She helped us find out what her classmates thought about science.
なんかない何も言ってない科学予想なんだけど科学とは
Science is important because it helps to create machines that improve the quality of life.
初めてなんかそんな機械を見てどんなものができるのかなとか。
I like machines because when I look at one, I wonder what it is made of or want to operate it.
そういうふうに思うから。
この前、We had an experiment in science class the other day, and we made a bell with an electric magnet. It was fun for me to coil the wire, to make the battery, and to test it.
It's fun to make new chemical solutions or something new that I didn't know about before.
When I look at the pollen of different flowers through the microscope, I found that there are differences in shape and size. I thought it was interesting. In school, we did an experiment with carbon dioxide and a candle. We found out that when you cover the flame, it is extinguished because carbon dioxide puts out fires.
As time goes by, science becomes more and more a part of our lives. It's good to develop science, but it's better to preserve nature as much as possible, to use nature at the same time. It's good, but becoming too thorough and too advanced is no good at all. Science should be more advanced because I want a robot to do my homework.
Landslides are natural disasters. With research, geologists can predict where and when they might happen. And engineers can design ways of channeling landslides so they do not cause any harm. 321 Contact is a production of the Children's Television Workshop.